Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive. Today, we're getting into a really powerful figure, Kalabhairava.
A deity known for this, well, intense energy, but also something more surprising.
Exactly. We've been looking into some really insightful material about who he is, his, essential nature, the stories, how people connect.
And what that connection actually means, what it can do.
Yeah, our mission today is to really unpack Kalabhairava, trying to get a proper feel for him, the complexity, the symbols, the worship, the legends, and the impact he can have.
It's quite a journey. He seems terrifying on the surface, but as we'll see, it's not the whole picture.
Definitely not. So let's dive right in. Okay, first things first. Who is Bhairava, and how does he relate to Shiva?
The name itself, Bhairava, it does suggest something fearsome, terrifying power, basically.
Right.
And he is absolutely a form of Shiva. But it's a specific manifestation, one that looks, aggressive, fierce, certainly formidable.
But you said looks that way, so there's more to it.
There really is. This is the paradox, I suppose. Despite that incredibly fierce exterior, internally, the descriptions are of immense compassion.
Compassion from that form that feels counterintuitive. How does that work?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a paradox. But his compassion isn't like a soft, gentle thing. It comes directly from his nature as a god of absolute, unwavering justice.
Justice.
Complete fairness.
Yeah.
He's described as never being unfair. So his compassion is that fairness. And the expectation is that you, the worshiper, are fair to yourself and fair to the world.
So it's a demanding kind of compassion, rooted in truth and fairness.
Precisely. Aligning with that truth, that fairness, that's where the grace comes from. It's transformative and, goes even deeper. In his ultimate aspect as Brahma,
Go on.
Bhairava is said to actually encompass everything. Creation, sustenance, destruction. The roles you normally think of for Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, he holds all of them.
Wow. Okay, that's huge. Holding everything. That changes the perspective quite a bit.
It underscores his supreme nature.
All right, let's shift to the symbols, the iconography. What are the key things we see with Bhairava?
Well, probably the most recognizable is the trishula, the trident. It's his astra, his tool or weapon.
And it signifies?
A protection, definitely. But also his control over the world, over the three gunas, you could say. It's a very potent symbol.
And I heard the material it's made from is important. Silver, iron.
Yes, that's a detail often mentioned. Silver is linked to mental expansion, intuition. Iron is more for robust protection, clearing out negativity. Brass is sometimes used too.
So people use it in worship.
Absolutely. For puja, for abhishek, the ritual bathing.
Yeah.
And for protecting spaces. There's that tradition in Kashi, bowing to the huge trishula at the temple there. That's significant.
Right, acknowledging that protective power. Okay, what about the kapar, the skull cup? That sounds intense.
It looks intense for sure. Symbolically, it represents holding Brahma's head, the creator's head. And by extension, it's like holding everyone's head, everyone's mind.
So holding the mind, what's the significance of that?
It's about moving beyond the purely rational mind. Our logic is essential, of course. That has limits. The kapar helps quiet that constant chatter, making space for intuitive insight, for a different kind of knowing to come through.
Okay. Transcending logic for intuition. But this isn't for beginners, right?
Generally, no. It's considered more for mature practitioners, for householders, people living in the world. Alternatives like coconut shells or even seashells are suggested.
Practical alternatives.
And the key thing is the kapar, whatever form it takes, needs to be energized through specific rituals, through puja. Once it's charged, offerings made into it are said to be wish-fulfilling.
Wish-fulfilling by letting go of the rational mind. Another paradox. Interesting. And the padukas, his feet or sandal.
The padukas. They symbolize deep, profound surrender, and immense bliss is associated with them. Yes. Worshipping the padukas is a path towards cultivating that total surrender to the divine. It's usually for very advanced worshipers, often something that comes of a kind of divine calling or indication. It's about placing the divine feet symbolically at your highest point. Complete letting go.
So much depth in each symbol. And dogs. We often see dogs with him.
Yes, dogs are strongly associated with Bhairava. They're considered his attendants, his ganas.
Like companions.
Or extensions of his energy, perhaps. There's actually a story told about a homa, a fire ritual in Kashi where they were seeking protection.
Yeah.
And suddenly a black dog just appeared. Right there. It was taken as a direct sign of Bhairava's presence, his blessing, as his protective energy made manifest.
Wow, that makes it very real.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the symbols. Let's talk about actually connecting. What does the worship, the sadhana, look like?
Well, a very traditional way, especially if you travel to India, is visiting his temples. The main one, of course, is the Kalabhairava temple in Kashi, Varanasi.
Kashi seems central.
It is. There's this tradition, you see. When you arrive in Kashi, the first thing you do is go to Kalabhairava. He's a Kotwal.
The Kotwal, like a guardian.
Exactly. The guardian, the cosmic chief of police for the city. You go to get his permission, his blessing, to be there. It's a mark of respect for the energy he holds.
Makes sense. Seeking permission from the guardian. But what if you're not in Kashi? What are accessible ways to connect?
There are definitely practices you can do anywhere. Reciting the Kalabhairavashtakam is widely recommended.
That's the 8 verses praising him.
That's the one. The suggestion is often to recite it 8 times daily. But crucially, it's not just reciting the words.
Okay.
Meditation is key. Meditating on him, on his form or energy, for maybe 20 minutes after the recitation. That contemplative part is really emphasized as vital for his sadhana.
Recitation to set the energy, then meditation to deepen it. Got it.
Exactly. And you can bring in the symbols we talked about. Doing puja or abhishek to a trishula is quite accessible. Making offerings, maybe in a coconut shell, if you're not using a formal kapar, especially after energizing it.
Right. What about acts of service, like feeding people?
Yes, Anadanam. Feeding others. This is considered incredibly powerful in Bhairava's worship.
Feeding the poor, generally.
Yes, feeding the poor and also specifically feeding dogs because of that connection we mentioned.
And what's the benefit of that? Why is feeding so important here?
It's said to be really effective for clearing negative karma, wiping the slate clean, in a way. And it generates positive karma,
Okay.
which in turn helps with your spiritual practice. And apparently, even with big undertakings like, say, building a temple or starting a major project, there are accounts of organized feeding programs linked to his devotees.
Helping others clears your own path. That's powerful. Mantra sadhana is also mentioned, but needing guidance.
Yes, mantra initiation usually requires a qualified guide. It's not something to just pick up from a book. And the Paduka worship, as we said, points to that very deep level of surrender, often later in the journey.
And this can all be done anywhere, not just in Kashi.
The energy in places like Kashi is undeniably potent, but yes, the core practices, recitation, meditation, feeding, you can do them wherever you are. It's the internal connection that matters most.
Okay. Now, to really understand a deity, the stories are crucial. What's the big one for Kalabhairava, the main legend?
Oh, without doubt, it's the story of him cutting off Brahma's 5th head.
Yep.
That's foundational.
Right. Can you set the scene for us?
Sure. It starts with Brahma and Vishnu arguing, the classic question. Who is greater? Who's supreme?
A cosmic contest.
Pretty much. And in the middle of this argument, this immense infinite pillar of light appears, a Shivalinga stretching endlessly up and down.
Beyond comprehension.
Exactly. So they make a pact. Vishnu goes down to find the bottom. Brahma goes up to find the top. Vishnu travels for ages, realizes it's infinite, comes back and says, I couldn't find the end. Honest.
Okay.
But Brahma, he goes up, maybe doesn't find the top, but his ego kicks in. He comes back and claims he did find it. And worse, he gets a Ketaki flower to lie for him, to be his false witness.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lie right at the cosmic level, driven by ego.
Exactly. And that's the crux. It's a violation of Satya truth,
Yeah.
which is like the bedrock of everything. Dharma, spirituality, it all rests on truth. Brahma's ego, his lie, this enrages Shiva.
And Bhairava appears.
Bhairava manifests directly from Shiva's fury. And then almost casually, with just the fingernail of his left hand, he slices off that 5th head of Brahma, the one that spoke the lie.
Just like that, with a fingernail. That's incredible imagery. How does this tie back to his nature, the justice, the ego we talked about?
It's the perfect illustration. It's very similar, actually, to the story of the Dakshayagya. In both cases, you have someone, Daksha, Brahma, who thinks they know everything, who clings to their limited understanding or status.
Right. Attached to their own importance.
Yes.
Okay.
And they exclude or deny something essential. Daksha excluded Shiva, the unknown. Brahma denied the infinite reality of the light and lied to uphold his ego. This attachment to falsehood, to ego, it inevitably leads to disruption. It calls forth the fierce energy Rudra, Bhairava, to correct it.
So the story is fundamentally about shattering ego and facing truth.
Absolutely. It's about the necessity of destroying that false self, that ego, and confronting reality, even the parts we don't understand or can't control. Some connect this to the number 8 in Jyotish, representing blind spots, the unknown, chaos.
The unpredictable stuff.
Exactly. The story shows that sometimes you need a shock, maybe even a painful one, to break through those material attachments and egoic illusions. That's often when real spiritual life begins. It's a reminder that there's always something bigger than your current idea of reality.
A cosmic wake-up call indeed. Humbling. Okay, moving from the stories. What are the actual benefits? If someone connects with Bhairava, what might they experience?
Well, the benefits described are really significant. On the spiritual level, the biggest one is probably karma dissolution.
Clearing karma. That sounds huge.
It is. He's seen as powerfully clearing obstacles on the path to moksha, to liberation. But it's not just about the afterlife.
What about in this life?
Fearlessness.
Mm-hmm.
And steadiness. That's a major theme. You gain the courage to face whatever life throws at you without being constantly shaken or disturbed. And inner strength, the stability, like that immovable Shivalinga.
So life's problems might still come.
They might, but your ability to handle them, to remain centered in the midst of them, grows immensely. His fierce form is seen as necessary, to cleanse the grime, the ignorance of the material world that clouds our spiritual vision.
A cleanser.
Yes,
yeah.
And he protects. But not necessarily by bubble wrapping you. It's more about making you resilient, steady in truth, able to digest and integrate any experience without being destroyed by it.
Developing that inner resilience, that strength.
Exactly. He can also be a potent spiritual catalyst. He can kickstart or dramatically accelerate your spiritual journey. And thinking back to the Kapar, the skull cub.
Yes.
He helps you break free from the limits of just rational thought, opens you up to intuition, direct insight, and as we mentioned, that energized Kapar is even linked to fulfilling wishes.
So spiritual growth, mental shifts,
Yeah.
Anything else? What about creativity?
Ah, yes, that connects to Ujjama Bhairava. This is described as like a sudden flash, an epiphany, a burst of creativity or knowledge that just arrives, fully formed, beyond logical steps.
A download of insight.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Nah.
A sudden upsurge. And he's also seen as a sort of gatekeeper to certain spiritual states. He controls access to what's sometimes called spiritual Kashi, representing illumination, wisdom. He guards the portal between the everyday material world and transcendental reality.
He stands at the threshold.
He could say that. And related to karma clearing, he can facilitate intense clearing. This might mean that karmas that would have played out over lifetimes get condensed.
So experienced more quickly?
Yes, potentially concentrated into a shorter period. It might be difficult, even painful while it's happening, but it leads to very rapid purification. And ultimately, connecting with his energy helps your whole system, mind and body, learn to accept reality as it is, which is just fundamental for any real growth.
Accepting reality, that feels very grounded. So finally, let's try to picture this. How does this power of Bhairava actually manifest? What does it look like, feel like?
Well, fundamentally, it manifests as that paradox we started with, the outer fierceness, but underpinned by that deep, unwavering compassion and justice. It's the power that holds creation, sustenance, destruction, everything.
The ultimate power.
Yes. On a more perceivable level, people describe feeling intense energy radiating from his images, from his temples. In sadhana, in practice, it can feel like a strong current, maybe even chaotic at first, as things are being stirred up, purified, but ultimately leading towards bliss, towards peace, as you align with it. His attendants, the Ganas, are also part of how his energy interacts with the world.
Like the dog in the story you mentioned.
Exactly like that feeling of direct, tangible protection. You see it in how karma seems to dissolve more quickly, how that fearlessness grows in you when facing tough situations. His power is that force that cuts through ignorance, allowing truth to surface.
And the creative flash, Ujjama Bhairava.
That sudden, nonlinear insight, that's a direct taste of his power. He is that energy at the boundary, the guardian controlling passage to deeper states.
And the intense karma clearing.
That acceleration, that concentrated experience, however challenging, that's his power actively working to purify you. And sometimes there are signs, like unexpected rain during a significant ritual for him, taken as a blessing, a sign of his presence.
That gives a really good sense of how this immense energy can actually touch our lives.
Okay,
so bringing this fascinating deep dive towards a close.
We've really journeyed through his complex nature, haven't we? Terrifying, yes, but deeply compassionate through justice. The ultimate controller.
We looked at the symbols, the trishula for protection and clarity, the copper challenging logic for intuition, the padukas for that ultimate surrender.
And talked about ways to connect temple visits, the Kalabhairavashtakam with meditation, using the symbols, and that powerful practice of Anadanam, feeding others, feeding dogs.
The story of Brahma's head really stood out, destroying ego, facing lies, embracing the unknown as the start of the real path.
And the benefits are profound. Clearing karma, gaining fearlessness and stability, intuitive insights, creative bursts, and that intense purification process.
It really feels like connecting with Kalabhairava isn't about seeking an easy life or avoiding challenges. It's more about tapping into a fierce, purifying force.
Exactly. A force that gives you the inner strength, the grounding in truth, the perspective to meet difficulties head on, process them, and move beyond them into a deeper spiritual reality.
It's a path of facing things, not running away. Demanding maybe, but leading towards liberation. Well said.
So here's a thought for all of you to perhaps reflect on after our conversation today. If Kalabhairava stands as this guardian, this energy at the threshold between our everyday world and these deeper spiritual states, what is it within us? What illusions, what fears, what attachments maybe need to be faced, purified, maybe even severed for us to even approach that boundary?
A very potent question to sit with.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the powerful world of Kalabhairava.